Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. I'm going to start off today with this. This is a train whistle, and it's very new. You've never seen it before. That's because I only bought it yesterday. And it doesn't work very well. It was very inexpensive, and it came in a little plastic case. And if I hold it to one side, like I hold it to this side, then you're going to see that there's an imprint of a train on the front of it. That's its design. Whoops, thank you. And then over here is the mouthpiece, kind of. Let me move it around like this. This is where I blow in. It's not a cap that you take off. You have to get your mouth over that entire circular thing, and it looks like there's a cross design in it. I think it's because it splits the air when you blow it in. When you blow into it, it splits the air. If you listen to a train whistle, it seems to be several tones kind of blended together. And so I think that's what that does. So that would technically be the mouthpiece, and it's just a block of wood. The other end is all blocked off. So you don't get any tone from the other end. I'm going to blow into it. It didn't cost me much, and it's not going to sound like much. You get what you pay for, but I need to mention that I'm in the process of collecting noisemakers and rhythm instruments. And the reason I'm doing it is that I'm aiming to do a special show just on rhythm instruments that children use. So I'm going to blow into it. It's not going to be anything that you're going to want to hear more than once. It doesn't sound particularly good, and I'm not particularly good at it. And it was real cheap when I bought it. So here goes. Does that sound like a train whistle? That's about what you're going to get. That's all it does. So that's the train whistle. And as I said, if you work with children, before they're learning music, because they're too small, their hands have to be a certain size, their feet have to be a certain length if you want them to go on a keyboard where there are pedals. A lot of children learn how to play and they can't use the pedals because it's going to be years before their legs are going to be long enough to hit it. But they need to know about music. They love music. They love to make noise. They love to play. And so rhythm instruments is the way to go. And, you know, just as an aside, I worked one summer at a school for the retarded. It's called the State School for the Retarded. And I used the instruments and rhythm instruments for children who were very developmentally and intellectually disabled, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it. They loved hearing the sounds. They loved the rhythm of it. And what I used to do is I used to take in a small record player with records, because we didn't have DVDs and things like that, and CDs. They didn't exist in those days. That shows you how old I was. But I had a little portable record player, and I had certain records, and I would play records to them, and then I would give them rhythm instruments, and they would shake them and bang them, and they just loved it. They absolutely were joyous over it. They were grinning, and even I noticed the children that were deaf and they really couldn't hear, they held their hands on the record player, and then they felt the rhythm. Because if you hold your hands on a record player when a bass drum beats or something like that, you can feel the vibrations. So they used to hold the record player to feel the vibrations. This was maybe the only inner stimulation they get. Now, you have to understand, children have to be stimulated in order to learn. That's why so many of the toys are squeaky toys, or they move, or there's something about it that can catch a child's attention, and you have those devices over a child's crib where the wind comes and it blows them and it makes sounds and noises, and they love that. And they need to have that. It's an important part of their development to have stimulation. So what I'm planning to do as soon as I can do it, I don't know how long it's going to take, of course, I want to do a special show with rhythm instruments that children can use if they're too young. You can try to teach children music when they're too young. They have to have a certain developmental age before they can learn music. You're not going to be able to teach them intellectual things like reading notes and counting time and all of that. Those rely on higher mental functioning to do that. But just to feel the sound and just to hear the sound and just to feel the vibration and be able to take something and make noise with it. And it certainly does help their development, just like crawling. I know this is kind of an aside, but if children don't crawl, they don't read well. Some babies go from just being flat on their tummies and then suddenly they're standing up trying to walk. They need that crawling stage where they're moving their arms and they're moving their legs, and that actually changes the development of the brain, and that helps them to learn how to read in later years. If they don't do that, then they can have some intellectual dysfunction because the brain never developed in a way that it would. The physical body and the movements of it does change brain development. So anyway, I wanted you to see that. Now, I also didn't finish quite with last session when I showed you some of the wooden instruments. There are only 2 or 3 I want to show you, but we didn't do it, so I'm going to kind of complete it today. This is a recorder. This is just a plain wooden recorder. This is a German recorder, and it's made out of wood, and it's stained a dark brown, and it's a very nice recorder. It plays very well. It is German, and of course we'll have the German fingering pattern, and then if I hold it to one side you don't see much because it's dark in color, so you can't pick up much. Now this here, this is a wooden flute, and it's actually a very nice flute. It's plain, but you have really up here the mouthpiece, and if I hold it like this, you can see the mouthpiece as we get this kind of set up. This would really be called a fife. A fife has a mouthpiece that is perfectly round, and it's not built up. If you look at a flute mouthpiece, it's built up around where you blow across it. There is an area around it that's built up. Well, you don't get that on a fife. On a fife, you have that round area that you blow across, and that's all you have. Yeah, this is perfect. That's the mouthpiece. And you can see the long distance between the mouthpiece right here and the wooden and the holes that you get, fingering holes that you get below. But you hold it and you blow across it like you do a flute. But the mouthpiece is just that hole and nothing up around it, nothing built around it, and it's just plain, but it does play well. It plays in the key of C, and you're not going to be able to see this, but if I put my finger in here, I can only put it in so far because you get the ear blocked off. There's a little cap in the inside of it, and that stops the air from going out this way. All of your air has to go in one direction in order to be able to get music. Now, when you're playing a recorder or something in which the mouthpiece is in the mouth, saxophones, clarinets, you don't get a problem because your own body acts as the cap, and the air doesn't get out from there. It just goes in one direction where you're blowing. But when you're doing a flute, or when you're doing a fife, and this technically is a fife, then you have to have it capped on one end, because if you don't, the air will go out in both directions and you won't get a tone. All you'll hear is air going through a pipe or something. I have a number of these excuse me, instruments that are really fifes. And we call them flutes, but they are fifes because they have that round hole and there's nothing that's built up around it. Now here's a wooden instrument. It's also German. In fact, it's 2 instruments. I've had this in before. A friend of mine, there's a little story behind it. A friend of mine that I was living with, she said, oh, you know, Pat, I've gone by, every day I go by this yard sale, and they've got this interesting little recorder, that is for sale. Would you like to have me buy it, and then you can reimburse me? And I said, well, that's a terrific idea. And so she bought it for me, and I was happy about it, and I reimbursed her, and I took it and I started playing it, and it doesn't play quite right. It plays. I mean, there's no reason to say it doesn't play, but it doesn't play quite right. And if you look, there are two different colors to this instrument. It has a darker head joint and a lighter colored foot joint. And what I discovered when I looked at it closely is the fact that it's two instruments in one. The head joint belonged to a certain instrument, and the rest of it is the body and the foot joint. There's no separate foot joint. It's all done as one. That's another color, and it comes from another instrument. I don't know how the switch was made, but I imagine since it's from Germany, maybe a couple of kids said, hey, let's switch and see what we can do, and they never got put back on the original instruments where they belong. They're both German. Both the bottom and the top is German, and I have it written down. One is a Hohner educator, and the other just says West Germany on it, you know. So it's two different instruments in one. And at first I thought, wow, what an awful thing to do. But it's been handy for me because I've been able to teach. I've been able to do sermons on it, how God restores us when we're broken and that kind of thing. I'm going to play a few notes on it. I don't know how well it's going to come out. It sounds pretty good. The only problem is you can't predict exactly what it's going to do. You might get a squeal instead of a note. It is very not productive to take two instruments, even if they have the same brand name, and take part of one and put it with part of the other. It just does not work. Instruments are individualized enough that parts are made for each other and should always be put together as they were made. If you start switching them around, you take the head joint of a flute from an Artley and you put it on the body of, say, a Casio or something, you're generally not going to get good sounds because they're made for each other. And just switching them around is not a good thing to do, and the tone is not going to be reliable. I don't ever do solos on it. I do a lot of teaching from it, which is good, but I can't do solos on it because I can't predict, especially when you get to an octave. Is it going to do the octave or is it not? It's unpredictable. That was the reason I noticed that there was a problem with it, because most instruments are very predictable. You get used to them and you know what to do and you know how they're going to respond, and they're very stable and they do it all the time and you don't have to worry about it. But not with this one. I imagine there's just enough difference in the bore. The bore is the tube which goes down all the way down. This is the head joint. The music is made here, but this is the bore. There must be just enough difference in the sizing or how it was made that it's just not predictable. So at any rate, I wanted to show that to you. Now, let me go into sharps and flats a little bit. Let's see if I get one of these recorders here. You see, every so often I talk about accidentals and what they are. And so I did a song that's just based on accidentals. So I want to play that, and then I want to play, if we want to focus on here so you can see the music that I wrote. It just kind of came to me and I wrote it down. I am going to do a segment on music writing and how to get you started with it. But at any rate, this is a song that's based on accidentals. Accidentals can be sharps or flats or naturals that are not in the key signature. So if we can just take a look at this, and it's filled with sharps and an occasional flat, basically sharps. Here's a flat right there, here's a natural right there, and that's what they are, but they're not, there's nothing in the key signature. They're all just placed in there as I play it. So I'm going to play this watching my time. I'm going to play it slowly and then I'm going to show you things about it. So that's the whole song. Let me point out parts of this song so you understand. Accidentals are notes, sharps, flats, naturals that are not in the key signature. If you look at the key signature here, I have it in the key of 4/4 time, and I have, this is a 2-beat rest, and this is a single beat rest, so you have 3 beats here, and then this quarter note is the 4th beat. And then I go on and I play. Here's an accidental, it's F sharp. And you go along, and this is an accidental, it's F natural. Then you have 2 accidentals right here, D sharp, F sharp. And then you go over here, there's a G sharp, another G sharp. Now, I don't really have to write this G sharp in because it's already over here. Once you write in an accidental, it goes for the entire measure. If you want it changed, then you can put in another change. If not, you don't have to write anything out. I put that in as a reminder. And then this is an accidental because it changes that G sharp back to a natural G again. Here's an accidental. Here's an accidental. This is an F sharp. This is an F natural. And these are 2 F sharps. Now, I have to keep writing it in because nothing's in the key signature. Then I get into a flat. Here's a B flat, and I change that B flat to a D flat to a D natural. And then I go here, and here's another F sharp, and then we hit the repeat side. When you get to the repeat side, you jump right back here, you play the whole thing again. And here you have a couple of options. I put in the second ending, which you can play, but if you want something more fancy, you could play the third ending. That third ending, I wrote in 3 alternate. It's optional. You may want to skip the second ending and jump to the third ending because it's more fancy, and you may want to do that. And so I just want to show you in review what the accidentals are. If you have a flat, well, let me play a G. The flat's going to be a half a step down. If it was a full step, but it's not a full step. A flat is a half a step down. You know what that song is? I think it's Can Can. It just kind of came to me. So a half a step down is a flat. A full step up would be just a full step. Well, what about a sharp? A sharp is going to be a step up. So supposing I play a G and I want it sharp, that's the half a step up, and that's a sharp. A full step up would be this. Well, what's a natural? A natural is going to be any note that you have actually sharped or flatted, and you want to get it back to natural. So supposing you're playing the F sharp, but you want it back to natural, all you do is make it natural. Now, you get this in music all the time. You get sharps, you get flats, you get naturals. Most of the time you have a key signature, and the key signature tells you what key that the music is in. Now, I didn't put a key signature in here because I wanted everything that I wrote to be accidental so you would maybe understand it better. But if I had put, say, an F sharp, it would have put it in the key of G, and then every time you hit an F, it would automatically be sharped. everything else would be accidental, but I wouldn't have to put any sharp signs in because everything would automatically be sharp. So let me play it again. I did play it slow before, but it makes a nice little exercise because you get a chance to see, oh, this is sharp, this is how it's played. This is flat, this is how it's played. Now, once in a while, you'll get a note that's sharped and a note that's flatted, and it ends up on the same note, and that's an enharmonic note. And I'll bring in some diagrams next time for that. So let me just try this again. So that's the whole song. It's all based on sharps and flats, writing them in as accidentals. And I'm going to go into this more next time when we meet. Right now, I just wanted to get you kind of more familiar with it. And the fact is that you can get some very beautiful music that's written a lot with accidentals. So we'll continue with this next time. Please join me then.